everybody, welcome back. We're here at Bare Bones Talk, going to be doing a little bit of news wrap up, and then we have a very special bit of stuff to do afterwards. Over the weekend, my Twitter for this channel kind of got bombarded by a religious dude who claimed to be able to prove that God exists and that his reasons for it were scientifically demonstrable, and that atheists are horrible people who are anti-science and science deniers, which I found absolutely stunningly dumb, but whatever. So I invited him to come and defend his views, which he originally said he would do, but since then has gone silent, and I don't expect to see him show up tonight because, let's be honest, if you're in his position, you've got to know that the stuff that you're promoting is kind of baseless and, impossible to support and all that. But we'll give it a once over anyway. I saved all the images of the stuff that he sent me. So we should be able to have some educational stuff happen by looking at the things that he claimed were so solid and understanding why they're not. But first, let's take a look at what's happening in the news. All right. So, according to the Associated Press, U.S. troops in Iraq got warning hours before the Iranian attack. Let's take a look at that. So, American troops were informed of an impending missile barrage hours before their airbase in Iraq was struck by Iran, U.S. military officials said Monday, days after the attack that marked a major escalation between the longtime foes, meaning the United States and Iran. At 11 p.m. on January 7th, Lieutenant Colonel Antoinette Chase gave the order for American troops at the airbase in western Iraq to go on lockdown. Movements froze as her team, responsible for emergency response to the base, sent out alerts about the threat. At 11:30, she gave the order to take cover in bunkers. The first strike landed sometime after 1:35 a.m., and the barrage continued for nearly 2 hours. Halfway through the attack, Chase learned the missiles were being launched from Iran. No American soldiers were killed or wounded, the U.S. has said, although several troops were treated for concussions from the blast and are being assessed, said Colonel Miles Kaggans, a spokesman for the base, or at the base for the U.S. coalition fighting Islamic State. So I guess we had some really good advance warning of that, which allowed the American service people to take cover in bunkers. And that may be the main reason why there was no loss of American life that night, which, fewer lives lost, good. We prefer that over here at Bare Bones Talk. We like it when people don't die. That's kind of our thing. We're all about not dying. Hang on a second. I'm going to try adjusting this camera a little bit here. Whoop. Come on, camera. Do your thing. Be good to me, baby. Trying to adjust this so we get a little bit less of me seeming to tilt all over the place and look in weird directions. Excuse me for the sniffles. Just so you know, I have like a deviated septum, so I have this permanent sniffle, and I apologize for that, but you're going to have to get used to it if you're here. So yeah, that's good that we had the advance notice. I am very grateful for whatever technologies and intelligence gathering methods were used that allowed that to be the case. The United States drops designation of China as currency manipulator. This ought to be interesting. Because, of course, when talking about currency manipulation, we have to see the back end of an Asian woman in high heels walking away from the camera. Because nothing says currency manipulation like a woman in shorts or a skirt who is walking away in high heels. The Trump administration is dropping its designation of China as a currency manipulator in advance of the signing Wednesday of a Phase 1 U.S.-China trade agreement. The preliminary pact that the two sides are set to sign this week includes a section that's intended to prevent China from manipulating its currency to gain trade advantages. The action announced Monday comes 5 months after the Trump administration had branded China a currency manipulator, the first time any country had been so named since 1994 during the Clinton administration. So for those who do not know, currency manipulation is when you take advantage of something about how currency exchange rates work between nations to give your country some kind of advantage. And the way that China does it is it has pegged the value of its currency, which I believe is called the yuan, to the American dollar. So if the value of the dollar goes up, so does the value of Chinese currency. If the American dollar goes down, so does the value of Chinese currency. And that means that the United States can never expect reasonable trade with China so long as they do that, because one of the ways that trade gets balanced in between two nations is kind of naturally when one of them imports more than the other, the values of their currencies adjust as a response to that, right? With China, that can't happen because whatever direction the US dollar goes, so does the Chinese currency. Usually, when these things balance out, as one currency value drops in relation to another, the value of the second currency goes up. So that's one of the reasons why, like, if you take a look at the value of the dollar versus the British pound sterling, if the value of the dollar drops in relation to the pound sterling, then the pound sterling can get more dollars per pound than they'd be able to otherwise because the value has dropped relatively speaking. So you might have an exchange rate of one British pound to $2 American, for example, because the American currency has dropped. If American currency value rises, it might get back to the point where it's a 1-for-1 exchange, where you get $1 for 1 pound sterling and vice versa. With China, that kind of change in relative values can't happen. Whatever value they have pegged the yuan at in relationship to the dollar, it stays there as the American dollar changes. All right. Even while removing China from its currency blacklist, the Treasury Department does name China as one of 10 countries it says require placement on a watch list that will mean their currency practices will be closely monitored. In addition to China, the countries on that list are Germany, Ireland, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Switzerland, and Vietnam. Okay, so Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the administration had dropped China's designation as a currency manipulator because of commitments in the Phase 1 trade agreement that President Donald Trump is to sign with China on Wednesday at the White House. So, reading between the lines a little, what this means is Trump talked tough with China, and the trade war really boned the United States, and that put China in a position where they get to, sort of dictate terms. And in order to try to dig us out of this trade war, Trump is now forced to sit down with them and agree to some kinds of concessions, one of which appears to be taking China off the currency manipulator list, even though they are still manipulating their currency by pegging it to the dollar, because Trump can't just let a trade war go on with China when it will always, always be won by the Chinese. And the reason for that is primarily that Americans in big business boned the American worker by outsourcing all their manufacturing and service industries that they could to places like China. So now the China economy and their manufacturing base and their service industry base has the United States by the balls financially. And, that was all because American business interests decided to save a few bucks by outsourcing their stuff. So they screwed the American worker then, and now because they handed economic power to China, they screwed the American worker again because now China gets to dictate a lot of terms to us. China is a currency manipulator, that is a fact, said Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader in the Senate. When it comes to the president's stance on China, Americans are getting a lot of show and very little results. That's very true. China has made enforceable commitments to refrain from competitive devaluation while promoting transparency and accountability, which, again, I'll believe it when I see it. The Treasury Department is required to report to Congress twice a year in April and October on whether any countries are manipulating their currencies to gain unfair trade advantages against U.S. businesses and workers. For example, China, when a country manipulates its currency to keep it artificially low, i.e. China, its goods become comparatively less overseas, while other countries' goods become relatively more expensive, which is exactly why China does what it does. The new report is technically late because the Trump administration has delayed its release until it had achieved the currency Phase 1 commitments from China. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, even the Clinton administration branded China a manipulator 26 years ago. And if you can get the Democrats and the Republicans to agree that China's boning us on the currency exchange rates, that's a pretty good indicator that they're actually doing it. Like, if both sides are forced to agree with that, you know? Um, Trump is going to sign the agreement on Wednesday, after which the text of the deal will be made public. That'll be interesting to see. They say it'll address unfair currency practices, and again, we'll see if that actually helps, if it actually makes any changes. The signing of the agreement caps a rocky 2 years of trade conflict between the two nations in which punitive tariffs were Punitive tariffs were imposed on billions of dollars of products from each nation. The battle escalated and uncertainty and caused businesses to pull back on their investments, slowing global growth. It also roiled financial markets with fears that the trade war could become serious enough to push the U.S. economy into a recession. And we are going to be lucky to get out of it if we can. All right. Queen allows to let Harry, Meghan move part-time to Canada. So let me preface this for the any Americans watching tonight by saying, who gives a shit about the British royal family? We're Americans. This country fought a war 200 and change years ago to get out from under the thumb of the royal family of the United Kingdom. So why do we care? Who gives a shit about the British royals? But apparently people fawn over them like Kardashians or something, so we're stuck having to hear this garbage on the news. But apparently Harry and Meghan have decided they want out of royal family obligations. I guess they got sick and tired of the royal family bullshit and wanted to leave, which caused the Queen to call the entire royal family into an emergency session of holy shitness, because any semblance of, a lack of unity amongst the royals is simply not done, and it's disastrous for their image. Plus, all these royals know secrets about what the royal family actually does behind closed doors that could probably torpedo their public image forever. But let's see. Britain's pragmatic queen brokered a deal Monday to secure the future of the monarchy, charting a course for Prince Harry and his wife Meghan that allows them to live part-time in Canada while still remaining firmly tied to the House of Windsor. And that also brings to mind this one thing. If Harry and Meghan were going to be like, screw you guys, we're moving, exactly how did they think they were going to get money if the royal family decided to cut them off? I mean, it's not like these two people are independently wealthy. All their money comes from the royal family's reserves. The decision followed a summit at Queen Elizabeth II's Sandringham estate in eastern England. A summit. It's not just a family meeting, it's a summit. Which ought to tell you how friggin' seriously these people take this stuff. What to do with royals who only want the job part-time. The British monarch said in a statement the summit of senior royals was constructive and that it had been agreed there will be a period of transition to sort things out in which Meghan and Harry will spend time in both Canada and the UK. My family and I are entirely supportive of Harry and Meghan's desire to create a new life as a young family, the Queen said in a statement that offered a demonstrably soft tone, which the fact that she even had to have a summit over it says that's not what she really believes. Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, which means that it's a job. We respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life as a family while remaining a valued part of my family. That's Queen of England being like, I own this shit, motherfucker. Royal statements are usually sticklers for protocol, but the Queen referred to my grandson and his family and Harry and Meghan rather than using the couple's formal titles, Duke and Duchess of Sussex. So for the Queen of England to break protocol like that, she gotta be pissed. The summit marked the first face-to-face talks with Harry and since he and Meghan unveiled their controversial wish last week to step back from their royal roles, become financially independent, and split their time between Britain and North America. The meeting reflected the Queen's desire to contain the fallout from the independence announcement, because who gives a shit? Why is there fallout from this? Why is it a big deal? Who cares? Let them go. Let them live their own fucking life. Holy God. which prompted hurt feelings among senior family members not told in advance of the decision. Yeah, because apparently when you're part of the British royal family, screw what you want, you have to do what the family wants. Egads. By midday Monday, the House of Windsor showed signs of pulling together. Princes William and Harry issued a joint statement slamming a newspaper report describing a severe strain in their relationship, calling the story offensive and potentially harmful, which is English, like formal English for, you're exactly correct, but we can't admit that in public. Though the statement did not name the newspaper, the Times of London has a front-page story about the crisis in which a source alleged that Harry and Meghan had been pushed away by the, quote, bullying attitude, unquote, from William. The joint statement insisted that the story was false, because of course it did, because image is everything. For brothers who care so deeply about the issues surrounding mental health, the use of inflammatory language in this way is offensive and potentially harmful, the statement said, in a flagrant display of attempting to distract the public from what's actually going on. The Queen said Monday's meeting that these were complex matters for my family to resolve. Why? And there's some more work to be done, but I've asked for final decisions to be reached in the coming days. Who cares? One of the trickier questions needs to be worked out is precisely what it means for a royal to be financially independent, what activities can be undertaken to make money. Other royals who have ventured into the world of commerce have found it complicated. Of course they have. They've had everything handed to them for their whole lives. They've never had to work for any dollar they've had. They don't know what the hell to do to earn money. They're like figureheads. They have, basically wage slaves who handle all that shit for them. Whatever the British equivalent of accountants and lawyers are, do all that stuff for them. They don't handle their own money. Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, sought to keep her public relations firm going after her marriage to the Queen's third son, Prince Edward, only to find herself embroiled in controversy when she was tricked by the fake sheik, an undercover reporter offering a lucrative contract for her firm. Oh, God, she got punked. Sophie hinted that if the sheik paid for the firm's services, he would get greater publicity because of her royal role. In the end, both Sophie and Edward, who ran a television company, gave up their businesses to become full-time royals in 2002. So basically, somebody punked them to get them back into the fold. Prince Andrew, who was a UK trade envoy, has faced heated questions about his relationship with the late convicted sex offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein. Oh boy. Whom Andrew said was beneficial to making useful contacts. The Queen's second son has relinquished royal duties and patronage after being accused by a woman who says she was an Epstein trafficking victim who slept with the prince. Oh boy, I guess now we know the real problem. The royal family continually screws up and does all kinds of horrific shit behind closed doors, and they're afraid that if anybody walks away, they might spill the beans. Egad. Harry and Meghan also face questions about paying for security, which is currently taxpayer-funded. Home Secretary Priti Patel refused to comment, but said safety was a priority and added that, quote, royal family themselves needs some time and space for them to work through the current issues that they're dealing with, unquote. Meghan, who is American, has long-standing ties to Canada, having lived in Toronto while filming the popular TV series Suits. On Friday, she returned to Canada where the couple and an 8-month-old Archie spent a 6-week holiday out of the public eye. Bob Morris, honorary senior research associate at University College London's Constitution Unit, said that the crux of the matter lies in the difference between being a celebrity and having royal status. Royal status sets you apart. It gives you a special role in our society, he said. It is very difficult for you to put on the hat and take it off. You cannot be half royal or royal part of the time. Why not? You can switch it off and on, and it seems to me the royal identity would always be the dominant one. My God, who cares? Technically, it's the British monarchy is figurehead. They don't actually run the country. That's the Prime Minister and the Parliament. Some of the challenges are enshrined in the law designed some 20 years ago after an inquiry that followed Sophie's brush with the fake sheik. The rules are aimed at ensuring working royals do not exploit their status to profit in business. Under the guidelines, the royals must consult the most senior member of the royal household before taking on a business activity, a measure that would encroach on Harry and Meghan's independence. What can you do? Last week's statement by the couple, which are also known as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, pushed the issue out into the open and touched off a royal crisis. Tom Bradby, A TV journalist who was close to Harry and Meghan warned in the Sunday Times that the royal family badly needed a peace deal to prevent, quote, a protracted war that could damage the monarchy. How much more damage can they suffer? They've got a shit reputation if they're doing things like sleeping with Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking victims, and they don't even run the country anymore. I mean, they're independently rich, so why do they care, you know? I have some idea of what might be aired in a full, no-holds-barred sit-down interview, parenthetically, by Harry and Meghan, close parentheses, and I don't think it would be pretty, he wrote in the Sunday Times. So basically, they have some kind of loaded gun information, you know, or smoking gun information that would make the royal family look even worse, and they're using that to sort of leverage their independence. I'll say this for Harry and Meghan: don't let your driver take you through any tunnels. Like, don't do that. We know what the last time a royal who was a little too independent was driven through a tunnel happened. And she got very dead. With much at stake, the Queen's decision safeguarded the peace for now. Royal expert Penny Jr. said it was vital for the stability of the royal family to keep Meghan and Harry happy. What is absolutely imperative in my view is that Harry and Meghan do not go away feeling angry and hurt and rejected, because an angry, hurt, rejected Harry and Meghan could cause absolute havoc for the royal family. Dun dun dun! She said, if they don't care anymore, if they want to show them, if they want to get their own back, it could get very nasty. They could go completely rogue. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Rogue royals. Alright, so we'll file that under why does anybody in America give a shit and move on. Cory Booker out of the presidential race. Couldn't get the numbers, couldn't get the money. That's too bad. Cory Booker was an ethical and moral guy in most respects. I have a lot of respect for the guy. He wanted to focus on unifying the country. The only other African-American candidate is former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, who does not have nearly the chops that Cory Booker does. Let's see. Booker was a U.S. Senator from New Jersey. He struggled to raise the type of money required to support a White House bid. He was at the back of the pack in most surveys, failed to meet polling requirements to participate in the next debate. Booker also missed last month's debate and exited the race, polling in low single digits in early primary states and nationwide. Well, that's too bad. And that's really bad, because Cory was a good alternative for candidates who were not on board with one of the majors like Sanders or Warren or Biden, because, again, he was an ethical, solid guy. For African Americans, Booker's exit is more meaningful than just being one less option. It means that we don't count, said Helen Moore, a member of the Detroit-based Keep the Vote, No Takeover grassroots organization. Now we can't look forward to any black candidate being considered from now until it's time to vote. They're completely out of the picture. That's true because, again, Deval Patrick is having a hard time fully getting into the race. Patrick, campaigning in New Hampshire Monday, congratulated Booker on his terrific campaign and said he believed the senator had a continued bright future in politics. That's one thing that I agree on. We need Booker back in Senate because he had a powerful voice there, and if he remains in the Senate, he'll be a powerful force in, on the Democrat side, helping the average American to stay above water. Booker had warned that the looming impeachment trial of Trump would deal a big blow to his campaign by pulling him away from Iowa in the final weeks before the February 3rd caucuses. He hinted at the challenges facing his campaign last week in an interview on the Associated Press's Ground Game podcast. If we can't raise more money in this final stretch, we won't be able to do the things that other campaigns with more money can do to show presence. That's true. In the United States, we have a borked election system where money makes a lot of difference, even to the point of making more difference than the quality of the candidates in a lot of cases. It's a humbling finish for someone who was once lauded by Oprah Winfrey as the rock star mayor who helped lead the renewal of Newark, New Jersey. During his 7 years in City Hall, he was known for his headline-grabbing feats of local do-goodery, including running into a burning building to save a woman, and his early fluency with social media, which brought him a 1.4 million follower platform on Twitter when it was little used in politics. His rhetorical skills and Ivy League background often brought comparisons to Obama, and he'd been discussed as a potential presidential contender since his arrival in the Senate in 2013. So yeah, that's tough. And then they go on to talk about other candidates here. On the stump, meaning when he was speaking, Booker emphasized his Midwestern connections, often referencing the nearly 80 family members he still has living in Iowa when he campaigned there, and delivered an exhortation to voters to use radical love to overcome what he considered Trump's hate. But he rarely drew a contrast with his opponents on the trail, even when asked directly, and some of Booker's supporters worried his message on Trump wasn't sharp enough to go up against a Republican president known for dragging his opponents into the mud. That is a good point. Booker has always been kind of a take the high road kind of guy, and you need to be able to work on the mat and wrestle with somebody like Trump verbally if you're going to stand a chance in the contest against him in November. Because Trump does that. Trump really likes to take the low road, and if you can't find a way to combat him in that, he proved that that level of discourse actually works. As much as we might like to think about Michelle Obama saying, when they go low, we go high, the time for limiting yourself to just taking the high road is over, because you're not going to be the only person, who's slinging words around there. And if somebody is good at making you look like an idiot and you don't do anything to mitigate that, you're going to have a problem. Booker struggled to land on a message that would resonate with voters. He's long been seen as a progressive Democrat in the Senate, pushing for the criminal justice reform and marijuana legalization, and on the campaign trail, he proposed establishing a $1,000 savings account for every child born in the U.S. to help close the racial wealth gap. He was among the first candidates to release a gun control plan, and at the time, it was the most ambitious in the field, as it included a gun licensing program that would have been seen as political suicide just a decade before. He also released an early criminal justice reform plan that focused heavily on addressing sentencing disparities for drug crimes. But he also sought to frame himself as uplifting, unifying figure who emphasized his bipartisan work record. That's kind of true. That didn't land in a Democratic primary and has often rewarded candidates who promised voters they were tough-minded fighters who could take on Trump. Booker's seat is up for a vote this year, and he will run for re-election in the Senate, which I definitely hope he wins. A handful of candidates have launched campaigns for the seat, but Booker is expected to have an easy path to re-election. His exit from the presidential race further narrows the once 24-strong field, which now stands at 12 candidates. Okay. Cory Booker, it was good to see you in the race. Volcano going off in Manila in the Philippines. Design of AR-15 could derail charges tied to popular rifle. Let's take a look at that. For those who are gun fans or gun not-so fans, let's see what this has to say. A subtle design feature of the AR-15 rifle has raised a technical legal question that is derailing cases against people who are charged with illegally buying and selling the gun's parts or building the weapon. At issue is whether a key piece of one of America's most popular firearms meets the definition of a gun that prosecutors have long relied on. For decades, the federal government has treated a mechanism called the lower receiver as the essential piece of a semi-automatic rifle, which has been used in some of the nation's deadliest mass shootings. Prosecutors regularly bring charges based on that specific part. But some defense attorneys have recently argued that the part alone does not meet the definition in the law. Federal law enforcement officials who have long been concerned about the discrepancy are increasingly worried that it could hinder some criminal prosecutions and undermine firearms regulations nationwide. So let's see what the details are. Now the cat is out of the bag, so I think you'll see more of this going on, said Stephen Hallbrook, an attorney who has written books on gun law and history. Basically, the government has gotten away with this for a long time. Cases involving lower receivers represent a small fraction of the thousands of federal gun charges filed each year, but the loophole has allowed some people accused of illegally selling or possessing the parts, including convicted felons, to escape prosecution. The issue also complicates efforts to address so-called ghost guns, which are largely untraceable because they are assembled from parts. So this would be the lower receiver, so named because it receives the ammunition from the magazine. Define a firearms frame or receiver as the piece considered to be the gun itself, but in an AR-15, the receiver is split into upper and lower parts, and some of the components listed in the definition are contained in the upper half. This has led judges to rule that a lower receiver alone cannot be considered a gun. The lower receiver sits above the pistol grip, holds the trigger and hammer, and has a slot for the magazine. By itself, it cannot fire a bullet, but by treating the piece as a firearm, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives is able to regulate who can obtain it. Because authorities consider the part to be a gun, the people prohibited from having firearms have been charged for possessing them. Okay. So basically, because the law says that whatever part of the gun is considered to be the gun itself is the one that people are not supposed to have, like it's pretty hard to do any damage with just the stock or just the grip or, you know, just the rear sight kind of thing. But because of the way this is designed, it skirts the law, and people who've been charged with, you know, possession of a gun based on having had this particular part, even if they're convicted felons, rapists, murderers, whatever, may be able to get away with their crimes because the parts that make this a gun is this and this together, not just the lower receiver. Which is a sucky thing to do. You would think that if you were a lawyer that you would want convicted felons to not be able to get guns. Like, you would see that that's an obvious stance to take. But apparently not. The gun fan crowd will do anything to get guns into the hands of people, including letting felons remain uncharged and having criminals armed that way. Because, you know, they're hypocrites. They talk about law-abiding gun ownership, and they bitch and bitch and bitch about how the criminals have guns. Meanwhile, these dickheads are sitting there making it easier for convicted felons to not go to jail for owning guns and that they shouldn't have. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they need to amend the law. They definitely need to amend the law. Yeah, AR-15 style weapons were used in attacks in Newton, Connecticut, Las Vegas, and Parkland, Florida. Okay. In the case of Rawald, who was prohibited from buying or possessing firearms because of felony convictions, the government claimed he used another man as a proxy to purchase 50 lower receivers. So the guy's obviously a gun trafficker because nobody needs 50 AR-15s for personal use. The 2018 indictment also charged him with having 15 lower receivers. Kurt declined to comment on why his client had the parts. Because obviously he's a gun runner, duh. The case rested on the ATF's claim that the components were legally firearms. Judge James Carr called that a plainly erroneous reading of the law and said the agency has a duty to fix the problem. Oh, God. Okay. What else? Yeah, even when these guys are caught buying gun parts as part of a sting, they're getting away with this now because the weird legal technicality in play. So basically, the gun fans have come up with a way of trying to skirt the law and make sure that every convicted murderer in your town can have an AR-15. Isn't that fantastic? Doesn't that make you feel safer, knowing that criminals in your community can have their AR-15s and not get convicted because of a technicality in the law? Alright, so this is interesting to me. The latest in the Iran situation. Popular anger swelled Monday in Iran over the accidental shoot-down of a Ukrainian jetliner. And by the way, I am so glad that it turned out to be an accident rather than a deliberate act by anybody. And the government's attempt to conceal its role in the tragedy, as online videos appeared to show security forces firing live ammunition and tear gas to disperse protests in the street. Iranians already suffering under crippling U.S. sanctions, expressed shock and outrage over the plane crash that killed scores of young people. They also decried the misleading statements from top officials, who only admitted responsibility 3 days after in the face of mounting evidence. So I want to point something out to you guys, any Republicans watching, who like to put on their stupid-ass MAGA hat and rant about how America's number one and how we're the best country in the world and whatever. This is a country whose government plainly fucked up, okay? And what do their people do? Even though they are starving and their economy is falling apart because of something we did, they're directly putting their anger on their own leadership, saying, you guys were wrong. You did something horrible, and we're going to literally take to the streets in order to do something to express our displeasure with you. Meanwhile, in the United States, right-wing groups like the so-called Oath Keepers, who stockpile giant arsenals and run around to the woods playing soldier and think that they're the next fucking coming of Washington and the Minutemen, who all screech in their basements, about how they're the defense against the government, being tyrannical or committing atrocities or whatever. They are all fucking silent in the wake of every bad thing Trump does. These right-wing jerks sit there at home, fawning over their Trump idols, wearing their MAGA hats, wearing t-shirts that say "Lock her up" from 2016 as if that's still relevant, probably slobbering at the idea of another Trump term. And what you can see now is Iranians are better about holding their government accountable than all you right-wing dickheads. So now, guess what? You can go and feel like you are second place to Iranians that your own policies are crushing. By every argument, they should be pissed at you because you elected the dumbasses who put the squeeze on their economy that has left the nation in economic devastation. But what do? They do the right thing and hold their own leaders accountable for their horrific acts. So you right-wingers can all just shut up the next time you claim to be patriots, the next time you claim to care about government malfeasance. You're just partisan right-wing idiots who care more about your dogma than you care about whether you're right or wrong. And I don't want to hear a word out of you guys. Not a word. The Iranian public is putting you to shame by holding their government accountable in ways you're too dumb or cowardly or on board with the evil to even do. All right. So, yeah, the Iranian public doing stuff that the American right wing wouldn't dare because they don't have the guts. And their own government is actually firing on them with live ammunition in their rifles, and they're still out there protesting. They have guts you right-wing types couldn't hope to match in a million years. All right, let's move on. Something about Major League Baseball, which I don't care about because I'm not really a sports guy. Let's see. What else we got? Drone video of South Carolina tornado damage. Yikes. Even the still image is pretty horrifying. Between that and the volcano thing going off in Manila, I want to point something out to anybody listening here. It's important that the human race remembers that we don't control how the Earth behaves. We don't control the weather. We don't control tectonic plates. We don't control hurricanes. We don't control tornadoes. We don't control earthquakes. We don't control tsunamis. None of it. Volcanoes, geysers, any of it. We don't control any of that stuff. Okay? The only thing we seem to be able to do is to make it worse by screwing up the climate with our unbridled pollution. Okay? So it's about time that people started realizing that the planet is going to be around long after we're all frickin' dead, and we are only doing things that hasten the demise of the human race. It's about time we started respecting the fact that we need the planet underneath our feet to survive. We need it to have water on it we can drink. We need it to be able to produce food through agriculture so we can eat. We need everything about that planet to be functioning at top efficiency. We do not need to be constantly doing everything in our power to wreck the joint. So if you're one of these people who thinks that we can just ignore climate change, pull your head out of whatever sphincter you shoved it into and wake up and stop being a dick because you're trying really hard to bring about the end of the world. And frankly, I'm tired of putting up with the garbage from people who say that it's okay. All right, let's see. Okay. Sacramento, California. California lawmakers have rejected what would have been a first of its kind ban on medically unnecessary treatment for infants born with ambiguous or conflicting genitalia. The measure would have banned all procedures on intersex children 6 and under unless the Medical Board of California deemed it medically necessary. State Senator Scott Wiener, a politician with a name uniquely appropriate to the case at hand, who wrote the measure, called it a civil rights issue and said the bill would ensure that people who are born intersex are able to make their own choices about their health and gender identity instead of having other people make those irreversible surgical choices for them. So this is interesting. Living Martyr Report, welcome back. Do I believe men can menstruate? So is what you're saying here, you're transphobic and you're trying to use a gotcha question? Is that where you're going with this? I mean, I believe anybody with a functioning uterus and vagina can menstruate, assuming they're in the menstrual age category after puberty but before menopause. But let's get back to the article. And by the way, I do appreciate that you came back. Honestly, I thought you had left forever after last time. The post-news wrap-up thing of this is going to be a very interesting set of stuff tonight. Where was I? Oh yeah, laughing at the fact that the guy who wrote the legislation was named Scott Wiener, which I just think is hilarious considering the subject at hand. The subject is serious, but the guy's name is still kind of funny. A majority of state lawmakers on key legislative committees throughout the bill's definition of intersex was too broad, especially after hearing testimony from a pediatric urologist who said it would limit doctors' ability to treat patients with complex medical issues. 3 Democrats and 1 Republican on the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee voted to reject the bill after a lengthy public hearing that included testimony from people born with intersex traits, some of whom supported the bill and others who did not. It's interesting. If this is not something that intersex people have kind of a universally agreed upon view about, it does make it a little bit harder to say this community believes one way or the other. NBC had a full article about it. Okay, well, we'll get to that after the articles we're going through now. Blah, 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 blah. State Senator Jerry Hill, Democrat, said he had an issue with limiting the surgeries until a child was 6. I look at my granddaughter who is 5, almost 6. I don't know if it's something that she could make that decision on, he said. I think he's missing the point there. I think the point is to let the kids stay as they were born until they're old enough to actually make the decision. Wiener repeatedly told... so funny using the name Wiener for this, I gotta be honest with you. Wiener repeatedly told lawmakers that parents would still have the final decision, but he believed delaying the procedures until a child could talk would help parents to make that decision. He said the vote likely means the proposal will not become law this year, but vowed to keep trying to pass it in the future. These are kids who were told from a young age there's something wrong with them, Wiener said. There's nothing wrong with them, there's nothing to be fixed about them, and they deserve the basic human dignity of being able to make decisions about their own bodies. I can agree with that in principle. Being born intersex is not a failure on the part of the person who was born intersex. And I don't think they should be surgically punished in any way for that. They should, I think, be able to make decisions about their own bodies. Intersex people are born with genitalia, chromosomes, or reproductive organs that don't fit typical definitions for males or females. Examples include people born with both ovaries and male genitalia, or incompletely formed genitals that can be ambiguous. Between 1 and 2% of the population are born with intersex traits. Bria Brown King was born with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, a condition that naturally produces higher levels of testosterone that leads to secondary male characteristics, which I'm assuming means things like facial hair, beards, mustaches, that kind of thing. Brown King said they had surgery when they were 13 after a doctor told them it would make their genitals appear more normal. I don't know why he assumed to know about how I would or would not want to use my vagina, Brown King told lawmakers. Hillary Kopp, a pediatric urologist at the University of California, said she opposed the bill, because it would remove all flexibility for trained medical professionals and their loved ones to do what is in the best interest of the patient. She said many times doctors will advise parents not to operate, noting, "We're not trying to perform sex assignment surgery. In fact, we don't even assign genders, we talk about the baby," she said. "This is such a complex issue, of course we want to get it right." That seems very true. This is not an issue that seems like a simple, you know, A or B kind of thing. The measure was opposed by several medical groups, including the California Medical Association, which represents doctors. Records show the group donated $50,000 last week to a committee working to select Senator Steve Glazer, a Democrat and chairman of the panel that rejected the bill. The committee that received the donation has no official ties to Glazer's campaign. Glazer, through a spokesman, declined to comment on the donation. He voiced his concerns about the bill during the committee hearing but did not cast a vote. Well, I mean, at least if the person received money, they have the decency to not vote on the issue at hand. So, wow, that's a complicated freaking situation, huh? On the one side, you have the idea that the person who's born intersex should be the one that gets to decide what they do or don't want done to their body, and, you know, that it should be something they get to decide upon when they're older. And on the other side, you have doctors saying, you know, that there may be concerns when, health concerns other than just the fact of being intersex are involved. So, I don't know if it was right or wrong to reject this, but I do hope that it gets further discussion until people can come up with a medically fair and human rights fair solution, you know, something that meets the requirements of both sides of that debate. If anybody here has an idea about which way they think it should go, or, you know, wants to explain why they feel that way, you know, please speak up. But I'm not sure how I should feel about which side of that is more in the right. It sounds to me like both sides have valid concerns, and until there's a bill that addresses all of it, it might be best to have it be further investigated. All right, let's see. Back to the Associated Press here. Any major stuff here? Trial opens in suit over Border Patrol detentions. Yeah, so, okay, let's just make this one real quick here. The Border Patrol is putting people in what amounts to concentration camps. I don't give a shit if you don't think that's the case. It is the case. People being put in cages with inadequate care and everything, and letting them get sick and go without food and go without basic sanitation. That's not, a humane detention. That's a fucking concentration camp. Alright, so... Ooh, God. Judge refuses to second-guess family separations at border. Holy shit. That's fucked up. You should not be separating families at the fucking border. How is there any argument about that? Oh my God. Oh my God. Taking kids away from their parents is fucked up. Alright, let's see what this NBC News thing says here. For transgender men, pain of menstruation is more than just physical. Safety concern... Whoops. Please support our journalism by allowing ads. Continue. Continue to cite. Alright. Sorry, I don't know what that was all about. Safety concerns and a lack of access to menstruation products are among the issues trans and gender non-conforming people face during that time of the month. When transgender model and activist Kenny Ethan Jones experienced his first period, he faced both physical and psychological pain. Initially, Jones, who had not yet come out as trans at the time, felt like he was losing control and didn't understand what was happening to his body. However, one thing was clear, he didn't feel like himself. I didn't believe that having periods would be part of my lived experience, Jones told NBC News. I felt isolated. Everything about periods was tailored to girls, yet me, a boy, was experiencing this, and nothing in the world documented that. He currently experiences a wide range of challenges with his monthly bleeding, especially when it comes to getting his hands on menstrual hygiene products. Having a period already causes me a lot of gender dysphoria, but the dysphoria becomes heightened when I have to shop for a product that's labeled as women's health, and in most cases is pretty and pink. Okay? Some transgender and gender non-conforming people who menstruate, like Jones, say when the products are categorized as women's products, they can feel alienated and may even avoid purchasing them altogether. I've definitely seen a positive shift with the discussion around women experiencing periods, but the stigma toward trans men, non-binary, and intersex individuals having them is still alive and well, said Jones, who gained attention in 2018 when he was the face of a UK-based menstruation company's ad campaign. People are still reluctant to the idea that it's not only women that experience periods. Living Martyr Report says, I am not a biologist, but I haven't heard a man ever having a period unless reassignment surgery. Why does the left want to change biology to cater to their own personalities and feelings since men cannot menstruate? I think what you mean is you're trying to say men cannot menstruate. I think you didn't mean to put the word have in there. Okay, you're not a biologist, I'm not a biologist. So here's the thing. When we're talking about trans men, we're talking about people who were born either female or intersex and chose to, embrace an identity as male. But if they still have female anatomy, they're going to have a likelihood of menstruating. This is not a matter of the left. The left does not want to change biology. The left is not saying, well, we're not going to call a cell anymore. They're not trying to change the science of biology. And it's not the left. Trans people are not universally left-wing. There's no law that says a trans person has to be a Democrat or a socialist or a whatever. Politically speaking, they can be whatever political stripe they want. And they're still going to live their life as a trans person. And, so it's not the left. So trying to just blanket blame anything you disagree with on the left is not workable. To cater to their own personalities. If you were born with a body that you didn't feel at home in and you got gender confirmation surgery to live the life that you felt you were internally, that wouldn't be changing biology. That would be trying to live as the person you are. So you can set aside claims of trying to change biology. But you might want to take a breath and type more clearly because you're starting to get heated enough that your ability to type clear sentences is suffering. But you are a female, you probably meant if you are a female, and trans to become a man, you can't menstruate unless you have reassignment surgery. If you are female and transition to being male, you can and will menstruate if you would normally because you were born female and have female sexual anatomy. So, I think you may have it backwards there. I think you're trying to say if you were born male and transitioned to becoming female, you can't menstruate. Because if you were born male, you would not have been born with a uterus, and that would mean you would not menstruate. Even reassignment surgery can't give somebody a fully functioning uterus at this time that would, cause menstruation. Man, you know what? Hang on a second. I got to see something here. Let's try and get Discord open here. I have a person I know who is a trans woman who might be able to shed some light on this from inside the personal experience of being part of the trans community. Let me see if I can get their attention. Hey, are you around? Trans issues are happening in my stream and I could use another viewpoint. Okay. Sorry, trying to get, all kinds of insight here. Do you know the difference between a leftist and a liberal? Do you? Let's hear what you think the difference is between a leftist and a liberal. I'm assuming that since you're actually asking that you find something wrong with both. Let's see. Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, founder of Period Equity, which advocates for affordable and accessible menstruation products, said anyone who menstruates needs to be part of the discussion and decision-making about their own health and well-being. Hang on a second. I think we may actually have an opportunity here. Boop 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 do 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 do. Gotta link them. Okay, here we go. All right, cool. Ba, 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 ba. Might even be able to get her on for voice chat, so you might actually be able to ask questions and get a faster response. Yes, you guessed correctly. And Lady Raincloud, I threw an invite at you for the Discord if you want to be able to talk live to avoid so much typing and be able to respond in a faster fashion. You are welcome to join the live chat if you want to do that. Yeah, so let's see how that goes for us. Oh, you're in another Discord call. Okay, well, working with it is just text is fine too. So yeah, I'm still waiting on Living Martyr Report to explain his perceived difference between leftist and liberal. I already told him I think that it's probably going to be something negative because he seems to think there's something wrong with people on the left. But right now we're talking about trans people and menstruation. So we're looking at a report on NBC News. Actually, Living Martyr Report provided the link, and I'm going through it just to see what it has to say. Living Martyr says, a leftist is similar to you who doesn't like what I say and says I am wrong no matter what. Pretty sure that's not the definition of a leftist. That's the definition of somebody who sees flaws in your arguments and point them out. A liberal is like JFK that can reason with both sides even if they disagree and come to a similar conclusion. That would be a more accurate description of me, but neither one of those things have anything to do with the definitions of leftist and liberal. Oh, is this somebody you've encountered? It sounds like you've run into this person in the past. Feel free to express whatever happened there, but I will warn you, Living Martyr, if you get TOS via lady, you're going to get timed out or banned, depending on how severe the violation is. So she said, anyone who menstruates needs to be part of the discussion and decision making about their own health and well being. I agree with that 100%. I think that trans people's biology has some. How do I put this? It requires dealing with it in ways that CIS people don't have to deal with, and we should not shame them or exclude them from health care and products that they may need because they're trans. That's just a silly thing to do. Welcome back, Living Martyr. Lady Raincloud was asking, why are you still on about this after Mark's stream? I don't know who Mark is, but I'm sure one of you can tell me who that is. Let's see. The hurdles some trans men and gender non-conforming people who menstruate say they face include the high cost of period supplies, lack of access to the products, safety concerns, and inadequate medical care. Some of these challenges were recently brought to light when a story about menstruation product maker Always removing the female sign from its sanitary products went viral in October. I remember that. A lot of people kind of went bonkers over that. Honestly, I've seen the packaging, and it didn't seem like a really major change, and frankly, kind of like, who cares if it's there or not? Let people who need the product use the product. It just seems pretty obvious to me that if somebody needs, menstrual products, they should be able to get them. I can't figure out what the objection to that is. So yeah, these things cost a lot. We already knew that. Everybody who uses menstrual products knows they're expensive as hell. Wow, 64% of low-income women in St. Louis, Missouri could not afford menstrual products, and nearly half the women who participated in the survey were unable to afford both food and period products. Holy shit. That's an expense choice you don't want to have to make. I'm inclined to agree with Lady Raincloud. I can't see any rational reason for saying to somebody who is menstruating that they can't have menstrual products. That seems outlandish. See, now this is an interesting thing. Trans individuals are experiencing poverty, unemployment, and underemployment at higher rates, so there is absolutely economic vulnerability there. That's an example of one of the ways that economic vulnerability can mesh with social vulnerability to create a really horrible sort of multiplicative outcome. I'm going to turn off the Discord here because Lady Raincloud's not going to be talking live, and I don't want to have two audio streams. I'm not sure if it's affecting anything, but probably better to not have that duplicate the audio. But yeah, economics plays a serious role in that as well. The organization's 2015 transgender survey found trans individuals are more than twice as likely to live in poverty and 3 times as likely to be unemployed as the general population. I would imagine that stems mostly from bigotry on the part of people who have the choice to hire or not hire a trans individual. And that's really awful. So, Living Martyr Report, what was your point in sharing this article? It seems to be saying that trans people have some challenges with this and that it should be something that gets resolved. I don't see anything here that's particularly, like in need of a massive argument. Was there some particular factor in this article you were hoping to talk about? By the way, Lady Raincloud, thank you for Cloudrick, thank you for coming by tonight. Because when trans issues come up, I know that you are well informed, particularly on the biology aspect of this, as well as all the social stuff that goes along with it. So I hopefully it's okay with you, but I kind of look to you as a very helpful information source. So I hope that that's acceptable because. I don't want it to be a one-sided conversation where people who are not part of the trans community are the only ones talking whenever there's an opportunity for somebody who has a real insight into things to be present. So you're very valuable as a contributor here, and I wanted to let you know I appreciate that. So, all right, well, I don't seem to see anything else coming from Living Martyr Report. We'll see if he has anything else to say. By the way, Lady Raincloud, who is Mark that there was another stream about? Who's that? Who's that referred to? Yeah, I think we may have had enough news for one night, so we'll stick with this conversation as long as it goes, and then we'll take a look at the religious guy who came to sort of spam me with all kinds of really bad claims about how he could prove that there's a God and everything. You are wrong. Trans people are who they are regardless of whether or not they have had reassignment or gender confirmation surgery. And I really kind of like the term gender confirmation surgery better than reassignment. But anybody who was born with a functioning set of female sexual organs is going to menstruate. It doesn't matter if their personality and affirmed gender are male. If there's a uterus that works there, they're going to menstruate. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, Lady Raincloud, but I believe that is how it works. As long as it's not about whether or not somebody's personality and identity is female. Lady Raincloud is a woman. If you talk to her, she has all the personality traits of a woman. It's who she feels like inside. It is her identity. You just the way to, as long as you're here, Lady Raincloud, I'm going to make a statement. I want you to tell me if I'm correct here. But when someone is trans, like Lady Raincloud, they're born with an identity, and then they look at their body and they realize it doesn't necessarily conform to their identity. So, Living Martyr Report, it would be like you waking up tomorrow with a body that was typically CIS female kind of appearing, right? You would still be you. You would wake up and go, holy shit, I'm a dude, but look, something about my body doesn't match. Right? And that's essentially what trans people experience as I understand it. They know what their identity is because they live it, right? But the body doesn't conform to the identity they have. So they quite reasonably want to be the person they are, right? And sometimes we'll get surgery to help, make the body match the identity, but not always. Am I kind of on the right track here, Lady Raincloud? Living Martyr Report, I don't believe for a second you're actually being sincere with that last question. That's a question that's so inane that I can't believe you're actually sincere in asking it. But you know what? I'm going to answer it. Because there are intersex people who are born with genitalia from both genders, and they may actually have a penis but still menstruate. So simply having a penis does not necessarily mean you can't menstruate. Now that's interesting. I had not known that that was something you had to cope with, Lady Raincloud. By the way, just so that I'm sure I'm understanding things, does the term natal female equate to what somebody who's kind of right-wing might call a natural-born female? Is natal female the correct term? Because I always felt weird when people would say things like natural-born X or Y. I always thought that sounded a little weird. Yeah, you're getting real close to being timed out because your definition of leftist has nothing to do with what being leftist actually is. You're just trying to redefine them to suit your own need to be derogatory. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, if you act like a dick about it any further, you're going to get a timeout. And if you continue acting like a dick after the timeout runs out, you're going to get a ban. Yeah, you're wrong. Because your definition of leftist and liberal have nothing to do with what leftist and liberal actually mean. They're you trying to redefine the words in order to suit your own purposes. Natal of relating to a present of birth, especially associated with one's birth. Thank you, Adelaide. Am I saying that right, Adelaide? Well, I know what the word natal means. I'm just trying to find out if, in regards to trans people, like natal female is what conservatives would call natural-born females. Just trying to make sure that I'm looking at the, understanding that they're roughly the same terms, just natal female maybe being a little more respectful. And welcome, by the way. So is somebody going to explain to me who this Mark person is? I'm very curious now. Okay, just I want to make sure that I'm, being, like treating people with the dignity they deserve. Mark Monkey. I have heard the name. I have never watched Mark Monkey's stream. That gives me a new name to go look up, though. So I may have to do that. So, Living Martyr, still waiting to get an answer from you on what point you were trying to make by sharing the article from NBC. Like, where you were going with that. Because it doesn't seem to have done anything other than explain that, trans people often have an even tougher time dealing with menstrual-related issues than cis people do. Which sucks for trans people and it's unfair. And by the way, when we're done with this discussion, we're going to be talking about atheism and really bad arguments for the existence of God, because over the weekend, a very pushy Catholic guy decided to spam my Twitter account with all this stuff insulting to atheists and claiming that science proves God and everything. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the stuff that guy had to offer. He said he would come by tonight to defend his beliefs, but then chickened out, so we're not going to actually hear from him. But I did save the little images and pictures and such that he sent, so we'll be able to go over his garbage anyway. You just don't look blah 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 words. Okay, you just don't like looking like a fool that pretends to know trans issues. First of all, nobody likes looking like a fool, but I don't think I look like a fool here. I acknowledge that I don't understand everything about trans issues, which is one of the major reasons I invite Lady Raincloud so that she can inform us. You know, so if anybody here has run into Living Martyr Report and other places where there have been discussions about trans-related anything, would you please tell me if this person is actually being sincere or if that last statement was just pure trolling? Oh, I have an idea. Here, let's try this. Oh, man. Can't type right now. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Ba-da-da-da-da. But you initially called me out as a fool. Where did I say you're a fool? I don't believe I used the word fool in describing you at any time. Let's see, does this work? There you go. Okay, Lady Raincloud, I've just given you mod privileges if you're still here. So you can help get this under control. If you feel that Living Martyr Report is being insincere based on what appears to be a longer period of experience in dealing with him, then you now have my permission to time him out if you think he's being a dick instead of being sincere. Because I have very limited experience with Living Martyr Report, but you may know the person better. Please do not ban him entirely, but a timeout is acceptable if he goes too, bonkers or acts like too much of an asshole. That being said, it's very likely that Living Martyr Report's going to have some views on the whole religion thing. So if he wants to stick around and participate in the upcoming discussion about this guy's bad evidence for God, his input might be interesting there as well. But we'll see how it goes. Hello, Nietzsche. Okay, well, let's see how Lady Raincloud feels about how you're behaving. I'm just handing that privilege to somebody who knows more about you than I do. That's a cute emote you got there, by the way. All right, so let's take a look at the atheism question here. Let's go over to my Twitter account. Bip, go to messages. I sent myself. I think I sent my messages. Did I remember this? Yes, here we go. Okay. So this guy named Bernard Gunting, or whatever Gunting, sent me some stuff over the weekend where he was making a lot of claims that don't really hold a lot of water. And started with, well, a lot of different variations on something called the Kalam cosmological argument. But let's take a look into this. First, he claims atheists are science deniers, which is absolutely not the case. Atheists have a long history of being science deniers. No. In the 17th century, they scoffed at God. I got news for you. In a lot of cases, they still scoffed at God, but that doesn't make them right or wrong. Mocked the Bible, still do that, and believed in a magical fairy tale called spontaneous generation. I I got news for you. Religious people believed in spontaneous generation. In point of fact, the entire creation story of the Bible is spontaneous generation. They just call it something directed by an intelligent mind. So, more bullshit from this guy. This is the anti-science belief that because there is no God, life originated spontaneously from non-life. False. That belief had nothing to do with whether or not there was a God. It was a belief that there was a mystical substance called phlogiston, which I'm not making that up. It's a silly word, but it's absolutely what they thought, that created life in weird ways, like this person talks about. Decaying meat produces maggots. They also thought that, hollow logs. And thank you for the follow. I appreciate the follow, although your name is kind of offensive. So, yeah. By the way, Lady Rain Cloud, you can let someone say bullshit, but they had better have a reason for saying so. So let the person say what they're going to say and explain what they meant by that. So let's see. Serious question. Do you believe the Bible has given tremendous good to the world? No, I do not. I believe there is essentially nothing in the Bible that cannot be had and had better without it. I believe it's given people a lot of shit, but I don't believe that it has given the world anything that could not be had and had better without it. Let's see. So, no, atheists are not anti-science. Atheists, being anti-science has nothing to do with atheism or religiosity. Although, statistically, someone is much more likely to be anti-science if they are religious, because most religious beliefs are based on faith, not evidence. It took Christian Bible-believing men of science. Okay, so, number one, no. It wasn't because these people are Christians or believed in the Bible that they had scientific ideas. And in point of fact, a lot of scientific ideas came from people long before there was such a thing as Christianity. The Egyptians developed a great deal of scientific knowledge, and so did people from the Middle East. The Arabians gave us our entire numbering system. So science has nothing to do with being a Christian. And the only reason people like Pasteur might have been Christian is because the majority of people in their region were Christian. It wasn't that Christianity gave them scientific insight. So any claim he's making about these people shining the bright light of science on anything has nothing to do with them being Christian, so that's bullshit. Atheism is not a realm of fantasy. That's bullshit. These God-fearing men, again, not relevant. Discovered the common life cycle, again, not relevant to religion. And in point of fact, religious beliefs, particularly those of the Bible, have virtually nothing to do with how actual biology works. So, they can stuff that lie. So without the Bible, do you believe there would have been, we would have been as civilized as we are today? Yes, I believe without the Bible, okay, let me preface this. When all you know is basically no science, including things like the lever and the wheel, and you need a force to unify a group, the fear of some imagined supernatural entity can be a powerful unifying force. So in that respect, it has, at times in human history, been useful, but that is not the same thing as saying it is true, okay? As far as the Ten Commandments go, the Ten Commandments are a pretty shitty moral compass. If that's the best a divine being can do, then that divine being is a fucking moron. All right? So we'll get to the Ten Commandments in a few minutes since you bring it up, but the Ten Commandments are absolute shit as a moral guide. So let's see. Living things always came from parents like themselves, not necessarily true. Life cannot create its own self from non-living matter, not proven to be correct. Life only comes from existing life, also not proven correct. Nor, by the way, is that in accordance with biblical belief, because the Bible says that life came from non-life through the divine act of creation. So number 3 isn't even something a Christian can rightly believe if they are actually, somebody who accepts the teachings of the Bible in their entirety. Therefore, the first living things on earth themselves came from an existing living being. False. This person is trying to create what's called a syllogism. By all means, explain why you're saying "wow," Living Martyr Report. A syllogism is a logical argument construct, and it works like this: premise A, premise B, therefore conclusion C, in such a way that if premises A and B are true, or A, B, C, D, E, however many are true, then the conclusion must also be true. Why are you leaving now? You're just getting to the fun part of this stuff. By all means, point out why you think I'm wrong. But yeah, a syllogism is a logical construct, and the quintessential example of it that's used in logic classes is premise A: all men are mortal. Premise B: Socrates is mortal, or excuse me, all men are mortal. Premise 2: Socrates is a man. Conclusion: therefore Socrates is mortal. So the premises, if they are true, meaning if it is true that all men are mortal, and it is true that Socrates is a man, it is therefore absolutely correct to say that Socrates would be mortal. What this person is trying to do is trying to say this first item is premise A, the second item is premise B, the third item is premise C, and then the fourth item is the conclusion. But since there is nothing about these three premises that definitively leads to the conclusion, this is not a valid syllogism and holds no weight as an argument. Then he finishes with, this is a science fact. No, it's not. Regardless of how I feel correctly that it is not a science fact, so you can go fuck yourself. And science doesn't care about your feelings. On that, I actually concur. Science does not care about one's feelings. Living apart, gotta make dinner and telling millions of people are morons. I didn't say millions of people are morons. I said the 10 Commandments are shit. Doesn't make people who believe any of it morons. It means that it's a really bad ethical system. And I'll give you an example of it. In the 10 Commandments, 4 of them have nothing to do with anything other than the supposed God figure claiming he's the only God and admonishing people to obey only him. But it conspicuously leaves out things like don't own other human beings as slaves, or don't rape people. Okay? If you can waste 4 of these 10 commandments on just whining about how you're the only God, but you can't quite think of including, oh yeah, slavery and rape are bad, then that's not a really good set of 10 rules. It leaves out a bunch of really obvious shit that should be on the thou shalt not list in favor of, throat clearing about how important God thinks he is. It also treats women as property. If you look at the coveting one, it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his ox, nor his ass. It puts women on a list that includes livestock. Okay, biblically, women are not human beings, they are property. Okay, so if you think that a list of morals that fails to mention don't own people, that fails to mention don't rape people, that considers all women to be property equivalent to livestock to be a great system of ethics and morals, then you need to rethink what you consider to be a great system of ethics and morals. Because I just came up with 3 things that could improve on it, and I am certainly not a god. And if I could think of those 3 things, why couldn't a divine being? In fact, in the Bible, the scripture doesn't actually admonish against owning slaves. It specifically tells people to own slaves and even gives rules on how to do it. It includes rules on how to trick slaves that might otherwise be freed into being stuck being your slave for life. So, I mean, the Christian Bible is not exactly a beacon of morality. Seriously. I mean, even the God figure as described in the Bible is a pretty immoral guy. He gets upset with people he created with free will and then murders the entire planet. I mean, that's a hell of a fucking temper tantrum. I agree since I'm an agnostic, but for God's sake, the millions of people that don't think like you, and I need to have an objective truth for their purpose and meaning. Okay, I can't see any reason why having a purpose for your life has to come from a religion. There's nothing about religion that gives it exclusivity on finding purpose or meaning in your life. Also, it has no, monopoly on hope. I mean, there are much better ways to find purpose and meaning, and there are much better ways to find hope that don't include all the negative stuff that goes along with, for example, the Bible. I mean, the Bible says you must love someone you fear. That's basically terrorism. That's somebody who has the power to annihilate you or punish you for eternity, commanding you to love them or suffer. You know, like, how is any of that a good thing? You know? It's just ludicrous. The entire concept of hell is an insane thing for anybody to think of as part of a moral system. And there's a very simple explanation for that. If you believe that human beings live a lifetime on this world and then have an eternal afterlife, and that one possible outcome of that afterlife is going to hell, that you are saying, by definition, that you think a finite crime, meaning the things that can be done within a finite lifetime, is justifiably punished by infinite punishment. There's no logical way to justify that. You know, the entire set of moral premises from the Bible are basically garbage. Or they are stolen from other, systems of belief that gave the same kinds of ideas without all the baggage and stupidity and violence and hate that comes along with the Christian faith. Where are the impoverished and poor down the street from me to find some kind of spiritual hope to get them out of their situation? Okay, first of all, spiritual anything is not going to get them out of anything, since, as far as we can tell, nothing spiritual exists. So they can pray all they want, and there's not a shred of a reason in the world to think that's going to help them get out of being impoverished and poor. So you can find a better question to ask, because that has nothing to do with objective reality. You want to give people hope? Give them somebody like Bernie Sanders who actually wants to help people and would be in a position to actually do it. Don't say, oh, well, suffering in this world is rewarded in the next one, and that you should be hopeful because you're going to have mansions in heaven. I mean, because the Bible actually says that. But I mean, look what a cheap and tawdry statement that is. If you have a divine, all-powerful being that gets to hang on, and gets to determine what happens in the afterlife and has no limits whatsoever on what they can do, if the best they can do is give you a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood, what kind of fucking paradise is that? Give me an existence where I don't have to have a body, where I can experience the universe directly without having to eat or sweat or shit or get old or grow enfeebled or, have my brain start to fail because of age. Why the fuck is a big house in a nice neighborhood the best that that religion can come up with? And Bernie is not Jesus. Give me a break. You're being insincere. It's not about worshiping Bernie. It's about the fact that he's a politician with a platform that's focused on helping the people who are average or impoverished citizens. So spare me the ridiculous comparisons to Jesus, because that has nothing to do with anything. All right, let's look at the next dumb thing this guy said. Where is it? So this one here is the Kalam cosmological argument encapsulated. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. We do not know that for certain. We just have not seen anything that begins to exist do so without a cause, but that does not mean it is impossible. That is something you can explain the problem of with the black swan example. Is anybody here familiar with the black swan concept? Anybody? So I'm going to give it a couple of seconds because there is a stream delay. I need to adjust the size of this box because it's obscuring some stuff. Hang on. Where's that? I wonder if I just move that up if it'll fix it. Nope, that's not right. Let's try... No, that's not the right way to fix it. Is it this? That's a little better. So I guess nobody here's heard the black swan thing. So people like to say all swans are white, but the fact is, it is possible that somebody might discover a swan at some point that is not white, which would immediately tell us that not all swans have to be white. And because we have not examined every swan that ever was, is, or will be, we cannot say for certain that all swans must be white eternally and forever. So when you say whatever begins to exist must have a cause, what you can only actually say is we have only observed things that start to exist having a cause. It does not mean it is actually impossible for something to begin without a cause. It just means we don't know because we haven't observed it yet. Nature began to exist. We do not know that for sure. Scientifically, we can only go back in observation to the beginning of Planck time. And if something happened before that, we don't know what it is because there's no way for us to measure anything that happened before Planck time. So we can't say for sure that nature began to exist. We only know what we can observe since Planck time began in our own, what others have called, and physicists call, our own local presentation of our own specific universe within the multiverse. Nature can't self-create, again. We don't know that for certain, and actually you can see nature self-creating in something as simple as cell division, because a cell will divide and then you have two cells that created themselves from the original. Hello, welcome. Living Martyr Report has gotten kind of upset and bailed from the stream. Can't handle the way I'm presenting things here. So, okay. You know? What we're doing right now is we're going over some very stupid apologetics that a Catholic guy bombarded my Twitter account with over the weekend, which are irritating because he was calling me anti-science because he believes all atheists are anti-science, while simultaneously promoting stupid shit like the Kalam cosmological argument, which you can see on the screen right now. So, yeah, there is no actual argument in favor of the Kalam cosmological argument. That's just dumb. Yeah, basically, science is against science. So, let's see. What was his next bad post? If atheism is true, if there is no God. So this proves he doesn't know what atheism is. Atheism is not the claim there is no God. Atheism is the claim that one does not believe in God, not the claim that there could not possibly be one. My belief is that there is no reason to believe in a God because there is insufficient evidence to warrant such a belief, and that's what atheism actually is. If sufficient evidence were presented, I would have to acknowledge that there was a God, but the Kalam cosmological argument is not sufficient evidence by a long shot. So, yeah, if atheism is true, if there is no God, atheism is not true any more than, a-Santaism is not true. It's the belief there is no Santa Claus. It's not the claim that Santa Claus does not exist or could never exist. And in point of fact, there was actually a real figure that the Santa Claus story was based upon. So there are only two options. False, because that's called a false choice. It tries to reduce a complex subject to two choices that the presenter wishes to present to you. It doesn't mean they're actually the only two choices, that are just the only ones this dumbass wanted to present. A, the universe began without a cause, violating cause-effect. That is very possible. We don't know because, as I said, we can't research back past the beginning of Planck time. But if he's saying that you can't violate cause and effect, then you run into the problem of saying your God is also bound by cause and effect. And if you say that God is not bound by cause and effect, you have to prove a reason why we should exempt your God from cause and effect. And so far, there has been no such reason presented. The universe is eternally old or uncaused. Again, violating cause and effect. And again, we don't know. That is also possible. But if you're a Christian, again, if you believe your God is eternally old and uncaused, then there's no reason, unless you can provide a proof of one, that we can't make the same claim about it being possible for other things like a universe. So the only anti-science thing here is this stupid variation on the Kalam cosmological argument. You'll see, by the way, that most of what this person has to say are really stupid variations on the really stupid Kalam cosmological argument. And here we go. His incorrect definition of atheism. Where did the universe come from? It created itself. No, that is not what atheism says. Atheism says you do not believe in a God, period, end of story. Are the orderly, he's probably trying to say, are there orderly laws of nature? It created itself. First of all, no, that's not what atheism says. Secondly, this doesn't even make fucking sense. Where did the first living thing come from? It created itself. We don't know where the first living thing comes from. But again, that has nothing to do with atheism. That's the study of a discipline called abiogenesis. Once again, this person demonstrates they have not a fucking clue in the world what the hell they're talking about. And the purposeful coded information in DNA. The information in DNA is not purposeful coded information. It is not... No, I didn't. But I did expect the guy to at least have the balls to come here and show up and defend his bullshit beliefs after he said he would show up and defend his bullshit beliefs. But I shouldn't be surprised that the dumbass chickened out. So anyway, yeah, DNA is not purposeful coded stuff. It is not a language in the sense of one intelligent being trying to convey information to another intelligent being. We simply interpret it in a way that allows us to label it, and that's it. It is not a language in the way that, for example, English is a language that was specifically created for one person to convey information to another. Yeah, I'd do it, but only if you're not there to argue with me. I don't think he would do it even if I gave him the floor. Hello, Copter. And this was his original thing to me. And boy, do we have some shit to unpack here. So, this person, he says, what is the nature of our space-time universe? Answer, the universe is natural, not supernatural. I happen to agree with that because we can observe natural phenomena in it, but that doesn't mean it necessarily is only natural. But you would have to provide evidence that there is something supernatural in it. Yes, Copter, we know. Is there any possibility, no matter how remote, for the universe to be eternally old? His answer is A, no, absolutely none at all. Is by definition scientifically impossible for a natural thing to violate natural laws. Therefore, the universe cannot be eternally old or uncaused because that would not violate the natural law of cause and effect. And you can see this person starting to repeat their bullshit now. First of all, we don't know how old the universe is. We know how old how long ago the first Planck time was. And we regard that as the closest to the beginning of the universe we can investigate, because there's no way for us to measure anything before Planck time. But that does not mean the universe began at the moment we could first discern Planck time. It just means that's the first moment we can detect. So the two are not the same. His entire second premise is utter bullshit. What about the singularity or even the multiverse? It is obvious from the fact that this guy is posting this bullshit about the Kalam cosmological argument that he is not an astrophysicist. So he has no idea if the shit he's saying here is even true. But he's posting it anyway, so let's look at it. Even if there was a singularity or a multiverse, it too is natural, not supernatural, so it too cannot violate natural laws. Ergo, even if there was a singularity or multiverse, it cannot be eternally old or uncaused because that violates cause and effect. That is wrong for exactly the same reason the second premise is wrong, because we have no way currently to measure anything about universes other than the local presentation of the universe in which we exist. So again, he can shove his bullshit up his ass. So logically, no, not logically, nature as a whole, universe, singularity, multiverse, began to exist, so what? This goes back to the whole concept of a syllogism. He is trying to say premise A, premise 2, premise 3 lead us to conclusion of premise 4 that, quote, logically nature as a whole began to exist. But that is not true because, number one, premise 1 is bullshit. Number 2, premise 2 is bullshit. Number 3, premise 3 is bullshit. Therefore, they do not lead to conclusion in item 4. So that whole thing is bullshit. But he likes to say, according to the law of cause and effect, whatever begins to exist must have a cause. And now we're back to step 1 of the Kalam cosmological argument. Since nature began to exist, no, we have not asserted that, or you've just asserted it, we have not proven it, and must have a cause. Again, you have asserted it but not proven it. What is its cause? Can it have a natural cause? Again, we don't even know if it had a cause. No, that would be utterly illogical, and no, you don't actually know that for sure because, again, you have not demonstrated any of your previous premises. Nature began, no, we don't know that for sure, and the cause of nature, space, time, and matter, must therefore logically and coherently be not nature, no. Okay? There is nothing that says that even if the universe had a cause, that whatever caused it must therefore logically be not nature. In point of fact, in our observable universe, natural things come from other natural things in almost every case. So the only conclusion you should be able to reach is that in our observable universe, natural things come from other natural things. Yes, thank you, Copter. Copter is just trying to pull my chain a little in a good-natured way. He's a friend from the same video game that I play most of the time. It must be beyond nature or supernature, which we call God, which is A, not proven. Again, none of the premises lead to that. But even if there is some cause outside of the universe, outside of time and space, and is immaterial, and whatever other hogwash this fucking idiot wants to, call it, that doesn't mean that it is a god, nor does it mean it is the god he particularly prefers. So that whole premise is bullshit. So everything up to Object 5 now is complete bullshit. But why God? Why can't atheism be true? Atheism is not a truism. Atheism is simply the lack of belief in a God. It does not claim that gods do not exist or that gods do exist. There is no truth claim in atheism. All it is the lack of belief in a God. Because without God, if atheism is true, we are left with one of two equally absurd anti-science options. Absurd option 1, the universe began without a cause, violating cause and effect. Option 2, the universe is eternally old. This is the same one, literally, like word for fucking word from the last dumb example he gave. So, first of all, without God, we have tons more options than just those two. Okay? And with or without a God, it doesn't make atheism true. Atheism still remains the lack of belief in a God. Somebody could be presented with conclusive evidence of a God, and if they are an atheist who does not understand the argument, they would remain an atheist. So even if a God actually existed, a person could still be an atheist. Even if a God does exist now, that God has not provided sufficient evidence to make somebody not, or to make somebody believe as a matter of fact rather than faith. But yeah, again, the universe beginning without a cause, completely possible. Again, since we have no way to measure back before Planck time, we cannot know. Absurd option number 2, the universe is eternally old, also very possible. Again, without being able to measure before Planck time, we cannot know. There's also the possibility of multiverses that occurred in sequence at different times, or that went on eternally. Again, without being able to measure alternate universes, we cannot know. There are lots of options, and we are not limited to just his two dumb and incorrect options. What about the third option, if nature simply created itself? Answer: for something to create itself, it must exist before it existed. Not true. Again, we gave the example of cells. A cell can divide, creating two new cells, one of which would be the original cell and one of which would be the offspring, which were created from the matter of the original undivided cell. So we can see that actually happening in the real world. Well, okay, if God created everything, then who created God? God, the creator of our space-time universe, logically exists outside his creation. False. There is no logical reason to believe that. Ask yourself, does a timeless God begin? Why would I ask myself that, since you haven't even demonstrated a reason to think there's a God, so it's a pointless question. And if you get to say that a God can be an eternally existing thing, then you would have to provide some actual reason why other things cannot also be eternally existing. So this is the first thing this dumb shit sent me. Then proceeded to presume to rail on me for a while about how atheists are dumb and anti-science and everything, with this being the smartest shit that he could come up with. So yeah, Bernard Gunting is pretty much about as dumb as a box of rocks. Does not understand what logic is. Does not understand what science is. Does not understand what atheism is, and still thinks he does. So typical overzealous religious moron who thinks that he understands something when he actually has no idea, which is a hallmark of overly zealous religious people who place their faith above any idea that is based in reality. So Copter, this was tonight's funsy argument. The guy had originally said he would show up and defend his claims, but as you can see by the complete lack of the guy saying anything in the chat here, he was, in addition to being illogical, uneducated, wrong, anti-scientific, and just kind of a dickhead bonehead, is also a coward who doesn't have the courage of his convictions to show up here and try to demonstrate that his case is correct. So cheers, everybody. Yet another religious moron debunked, and probably better for him that he didn't show up, because he probably wouldn't have been able to take the logical thrashing that would come from his repeated attempts to push the Kalam cosmological bullshit. Yeah. By the way, in War Thunder, you missed a good set of games where I was playing some Russians at 7-7. So yeah, does anybody have any questions or comments about the Kalam cosmological argument, or have you ever run into an overly zealous religious person who tried to club you with their beliefs, then called you what amounts to an idiot for not accepting their incorrect logic, and then ran away like a chicken? Here's an even better point, Copter. You may not know even after you die. There's no evidence that says that even if there is some kind of life after death, that a god would choose to reveal itself. The only reason people think that is the various religions of the world claim it. But just as there is no actual evidence pointing to the existence of a god, there's no actual evidence pointing to the idea that any religion's described afterlife is accurate. So even if there's an afterlife, it could mean that you just spend eternity scratching at the surface of your coffin in desperation. You have no way of knowing. I avoid going out or talking to people, so no. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's been my experience that people often have some really dumb fucking opinions. And this guy, this Bernard Grunting, whatever his fucking name is, he is a walking, talking example of Dunning-Kruger effect. I am not even kidding. I have not seen such a classic example of Dunning-Kruger in quite a while. It's just bad. So bad. Like, how in the world do you get like that? How do you get like that? But, I imagine the answer is brainwashing since youth, Oh, hi. My dog has come to say hello. She's currently seeking attention. Oh, good gravy. I think there's a Democratic debate coming up on one of the upcoming Wednesdays. I don't know if it's this Wednesday or not. But whichever Wednesday it is, I will probably be spending time going over it during the show. I don't necessarily believe in any religion. I just attend a church when asked to by the girlfriend because I'm a totally nice and normal person. I am petting the dog. Keep in mind, if your girlfriend respected your lack of belief, they wouldn't ask you to force that on you. Tuesday, okay. But yeah, you're kind and considerate, and that's great, but you should expect the same in return if you are. The thing is, I avoid going into any church because sitting through a church service is just mind-boggling to me, because I look around and I can't believe people of average human intelligence actually believe any of the shit that's being said to them there. It's just mind-boggling. I feel disgusted by the people's blind sheep-like acceptance of this stuff. Well, and that's fine, If you want to do it, that's okay. But again, she should not necessarily be asking you if she's aware of your views. Tuesday. Okay. Do we know how many people are going to be on the dais? I know there are 12 Democrat candidates left in the field, but I don't know how many of them actually qualified to meet the minimum requirements for attendance in the debate yet. Oh, that's delicious iced tea. It's delicious. Delicious. So I'm curious if anybody here is actually planning on voting in the Democrat primary, like I am. I'm a Sanders guy. Anybody here have a favorite candidate and want to talk about why they believe that candidate is the one to go for? Copter, if believing in religion is going to help her, then you bet I'm going to go to church with her. And that's fine. You know, if it's your choice, then you do you. That's all okay. Did you tell me you were engaged and getting married to her? Are you seriously going to vote Trump, Copter? Thump 2020. If you want to vote Thump, you know, knock yourself out. Write in Thump. Yeah, I'm a Bernie guy, Nishi. Totally a Bernie guy. Egad, why not? Are you not voting because of Sanders, or are you not voting for some other reason? Because I would encourage you to get out and vote. I would also encourage you to get out and vote Democrat. Because as much as you may fear it, Democrats are not going to come and confiscate your guns. Vistro, Bernie 2020. I am definitely all about Bernie. You know, I have stopped putting political stuff on my car because I consider it very risky around here that somebody would key my vehicle for it. God, Copter, I will give you 100 golden eagles on War Thunder if you vote Bernie. Jesus, if you don't care who you vote for, vote Bernie. I'll give you the golden eagles so you can get yourself something on War Thunder. Strike a blow for justice, equality, and fairness, dude. I mean, I was just earlier today during the news wrap up. I was looking at this thing going through the news right now that the gun rights people are using a wording in the federal gun laws about lower receivers to keep cases pending against convicted felons who have been charged with having guns when they're not allowed to from going through, because for some reason these gun rights people think that letting these felons get their hands on shit tons of AR-15s, like this one guy had 80 of them, right? Obviously a gun trafficker, but they're going to use a technicality in the wording of the law to get these people out of being charged for gun running. Yeah, I know. Still, vote Bernie, dude. Do it. I will love you forever. I promise not to put the camera on during the game stream and show off my man boobs. Whatever it'll take to motivate you to vote smart, you know, that would be good. Think of it this way. Here's a good motivator for you to vote Bernie. Under a Bernie Sanders administration, all the health care that your girl needs will cost her nothing. All those, you know, trips to doctors and all the help that you're talking about her needing to get and wanting to get and everything. Zero cost to her. Or you. How's that for a reason? Well, good. Wait until you guys get financially on your feet and you get your household income is too high to qualify for that. You know, you're getting married. Once that happens, you're looked at as a household income, and all that free stuff is going to go away. Plus, even if it's free now, under a Trump administration, he keeps rolling back every kind of public assistance he can. There's a clock ticking on how long that'll last for her, even if she's getting it now. Republican administrations will peel that shit away one day at a time until she gets nothing for free. I mean, he's already peeled 700,000 people off of food stamps for no reason other than because he hates food stamps. So there are 700,000 families that are going without food because of that guy. Like, it blows my mind at this point how anybody can not want to vote considering how important it is to their own future well-being, and how anybody could want to vote Republican considering how much the Republican Party continues to bone the American public, including and often especially its own supporters. Oh, man. So, yeah, I think we have a lot of Sanders people here, which is freaking awesome. I'm going to have to reset the poll down at the bottom of the screen because the field is shrinking. And I may actually limit it to, like, the top 6 or so. What makes you want to give up, Nietzsche? Like, me and the girlfriend had a pretty decent argument today. About what? I mean, if you're comfortable talking about it, I'm assuming you are since you're bringing it up. That people still don't get it and haven't learned. Yeah, I know. I mean, it goes back to the what motivates Republican voters. They're mainly motivated by hate, not by self-interest. She slept with another girl and refuses to understand how that's cheating because it was with a girl, not a guy. Anyway. So, do you just want to vent about that, or do you want an idea on how you can actually explain that to her? Because I'll go either way. I'll just listen if that's all you're looking for, or I'll give you advice if that's what you need. You tell me. That's because what she's saying is not logical. Oh. There's a particular streamer I was hoping was on, but they're not. Anyway, and she's asking me to give her another kid, and I'm like trying to come up with a reason on why that's a bad idea. Again, are you looking for advice, or are you just looking for the opportunity to vent? Because that's fine too if you're not looking for advice. But I just need to know so that I don't like start offering advice that you're not asking for. Ba-da-ba-ba-da, wah, 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 wah. Oh, I want to show you guys this video. It's friggin' hilarious.
Look, I'm as liberal as they come, but I think healthcare is a privilege. Look, I'm as liberal as they come, but I don't know why poor people don't just sell gold like my dad did.
Look, I'm as liberal as they come, but I don't get why women want to run for office.
I'm as liberal as they come, but bisexuals? I'm as liberal as they come, but I don't get why my tax money has to go to poor people.
Shouldn't it go to rich people and companies who know how to handle their money?
Look, I even voted for Kerry, but like, if you're poor,
You need to work hard.
I'm as liberal as the next guy, but I think Bill O'Reilly's got some good ideas.
Look, I'm as liberal as they come.
But rich people are job creators. Look, I'm all for feminism, but it should be illegal for my wife to yell at me when I make a mess. I'm as liberal as they come, but if I can't read what's on the menu, you're getting a 1 star on Yelp. Look, I'm a big feminist, but
I mean, there's a reason I voted for Trump.
so, want to come back to my place?
I love that video. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you to leave her. What I'm going to say first on the she slept with another girl and refuses to understand it. Let her know she has to accept 2 things. The first thing of which is what a person perceives as cheating is hurtful, even if she doesn't necessarily understand it. Okay, that hurting you should be the thing she's trying to avoid. So she should ask you what you consider cheating, and then work within that framework. And secondly, if you want to tell her what constitutes cheating, explain it in a way that sounds kind of like any contact you have with another human being that's geared toward achieving orgasm is cheating. You know? As far as giving her another baby, if you're interested in having a kid with her at some point in the future, you can tell her that you understand that's something she wants and that you're willing to entertain the idea, but only after you guys have reached a level of financial stability where you feel like you can adequately care for another child. If you want to do that at some point in the future, it's okay for you to say yes, but rather than yes now. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I will say if she's sleeping with other people, even if they're female, you might want to get her to rein that in before it drives you bonkers. Because that says to me that she doesn't have the same idea of what your relationship should look like as you do. So what'd you think of the I'm as liberal as the next guy video? Is that some funny shit or what? I wish there was some way when you look at the users in chat, if it would put like a little indicator next to which ones are like bots, like Commander Root. She sees all these newborns on Facebook and it sets off a chain reaction. Just tell her, because as far as I understand it, you would not necessarily be against the idea just at a time when it seems more appropriate. And if that's the case, just let her know that. You tell her you see that in your future, just not until, and then set your conditions until, we are married, until we are financially stable, until we have a house, until we, whatever it is that you think would generate a stable environment in which to raise another kid. And explain to her that if you're going to have a kid, you want to provide for that child the best way you can. Yeah, well, explain the reasons why. Be like, woman, you ask me one more time, I'm getting a vasectomy. No, I'm kidding. Absolutely do not say that. Do not say that under any circumstance. Should you say that? Don't do that. Oh, God. Don't do that. Oh, God. So, wow, this conversation took a turn away from the usual. You're going to get me stabbed again. Oh, God. All right. So we are so far afield from any of the topics I thought we were going to go on about today. Copter. If now you kind of have to tell the story, unless you want me to give the abbreviated version. That's pretty much about as abbreviated a version as you can get. Yeah. I mean, Nietzsche, for me, that's kind of a deal breaker, but apparently not for Copter. Uh, yeah. You're an odd duck, Copter. Hey, Nietzsche, I don't understand it either, but what I do know is that Copter is very, committed to trying to make some work with this person. So I try to give him the best advice I can within the framework he has. Because, I mean, anything else would not be helpful. By the way, for anybody who actually is paying attention to the British monarchy thing, I've come up with my own hashtag for that whole debacle. Are you ready for this? I just keep picturing royals with these giant beards and camo clothes. It's time for another Boston Tea Party. I don't think most Americans give a shit about tea anymore enough to make that happen. I mean, here's a fun question for you, Copter. What do you think was behind the Boston Tea Party? Like, why do you think they did that? I'm curious to know if you know why the colonists dumped that tea into the bay. The Boston iPhone Party. Because most people, at least in the United States, have not a fucking clue in the world why that actually happened. They're just taught in grade school that happened, before the Revolutionary War. There's more to it than just taxes. Taxes were a symptom of the problem, not the actual problem. I can almost hear you furiously Googling. Yeah, but again, the tax on tea was a symptom, not the actual problem. See, this is great because this is a good learning opportunity to help understand why it's important to dig a little deeper than just the surface level stuff. So let me know when you're ready to stop guessing and have me just tell you. Okay, so here's the actual reason. At that time, the most powerful company in the world was the East India Company, which was a corporation at its time that was about as powerful as you would expect a combination of all the major transport companies and all the major businesses in the United States combined. Like if you were to take Walmart and Amazon and combine them with all the trucking companies and railroad companies and shipping companies in America, you'd end up with what amounts to the East India Company. Okay? They were multinational. They controlled the trade of virtually everything useful in the world and pretty much all the trade that came to the colonies. And they used their wealth to buy political influence, the way that lobbyists use money to buy American congressmen and senators today. Only they used it on Great Britain. Okay, they used it on England, and they, controlled much of what the British government did by using their financial influence and their ability to affect trade to strong arm the British government. And when the colonies started growing their own tea, this put a major crimp in the profit margin for the East India Company. So they told the British Crown, we need you to increase the taxes on tea so that it will become so expensive for Americans to produce and actually export their tea that they'll be forced to just give up on it and get back to buying tea from us. Okay? And it was because of this that the American economy started to suffer, because it wasn't just tea that they did this about. But tea was very profitable. Okay? It was like the Coke or Pepsi of the day. It was what everybody drank, right? So the entire Boston Tea Party was a massive anti-corporate attack designed to strike back at a mega company that was crushing the local economy and rendering people penniless. And they attacked and dumped tea into the harbor because tea was easily the most profitable substance that was in that harbor at the time. So they went for where the most valuable ship was and dumped its cargo into the sea. And that happened to be tea. So that's the reason the whole thing happened. It was for the same reason that we need to avoid monopolies and such in this, modern economy, because when you let companies get too powerful, they buy influence and use it to fuck everybody. But back then, they weren't afraid to just like sneak into a harbor and dump a whole cargo ship's worth of shit into the water. They were basically the very people that you routinely get paid to shoot. But yeah, it wasn't about tea. The taxes were just a symptom of the problem. The actual problem was the East India Company having so much wealth and power that it could devastate the colony economy at a whim. And that it actually did so to ensure its own profits. It's interesting to see that tactics like that have gone back way, way, way before anything that we think about as modern corporate malfeasance here in the United States, which is why I say it's important to go a little deeper than the surface level stuff. If people were taught these kinds of things in school and they were taught to look for this kind of horrific treatment of the public on the part of businesses, businesses would have a much harder time strong-arming the public. Yes, I agree. Atomic squid solution. Absolutely correct. All right, so I think we should probably wrap up here. The conversation's winding down. We've gone way afield from what we usually do here. But I will be back again on Wednesday with gaming on the other channel at 7. I am thinking of changing this stream to 10 p.m. and later, since that's when it seems like people are actually showing up. Like, usually what happens is I do a news wrap-up for an hour at the beginning that there's nobody there for, and then we get into the interesting stuff when people actually show up. And that usually starts happening like 9:45 or 10. So I've been thinking about doing the game stream from 7 to 10, and then this stream from 10 o'clock on. So I'd be curious to know if anybody has an opinion on starting the Bare Bones Talk stream at 10 instead of 9. Let me know what your thoughts are. Iguana attacks by ground and squid attacks by air. 10 o'clock New York time. This stream starts normally at 9 o'clock New York time. I'm thinking of moving it 1 hour later. Because if you take a look at the VOD, you'll see that I do most of the news wrap-up stuff for like 9 o'clock until 9:45, and there's literally nobody here but me. And people actually start showing up like 9:45, 10 o'clock. Or if they're here, they're lurking, and I don't know they're here because they don't have something set up to out the lurkers, you know? Like, I don't want to out people who are intentionally staying silent most of the time. I think that's, kind of rude. If somebody just wants to silently listen. You show up when the girlfriend falls asleep. Another reason why people show up later than 9 o'clock. Tell her she should watch the show with you. She'll learn cool stuff. Works for you, but it's up to me. I appreciate you saying so. I'm trying to do what viewers will work with. What'll be easier for them. Because as a streamer, the goal here is to do a good show and actually have people interested enough that they show up and want to watch. But apparently there's something about doing this at 9 o'clock that is reducing the number of people that are actually here. So I was thinking about moving it to 10 to make it start when people are much more likely to be present, according to what I have seen so far. I'm not getting smacked with a wooden spoon for being on the phone too much. Or stabbed again. Stabbed could happen. You never know. Stabbed. Yeah. So... Okay, so here's what I think I'll do. I think I'll finish out this week doing 9 o'clocks, and then just let people know each time that I'm going to be switching next week to doing it at 10 p.m., so it won't come as a surprise to anybody who shows up regularly. Stabbed with more like a wooden shiv. You know what they call a long object made of wood with a point at the end? A spear. But yeah, so how about that? How about I finish out this week as a 9 o'clocker and then move to next week at 10? Plus, that'll give the 7 p.m. game stream a little more time for guys to enjoy the gaming. So, works. I think it works out on both sides, honestly. All right, any last thoughts before we close for the night? Let me see if I can find some nice person to raid. Hold on. Okay, Copter, I may be taking a few minutes off from the computer after I'm done, but I will come back and check. Let's see, who's around to raid? How about Central Committee? There we go. All right. So it'll be a small raid, but I appreciate it if you guys go there and just say hello. I would raid Waffly from the game stream, not from this one necessarily. But yeah, thank you guys for being here, and I'll be back again on Wednesday. Have a wonderful night.